The next step after we have done this analysis or the initial data modeling. So this is just the first step, the building block of our analysis. The next step is to actually go ahead and analyze how do we how do with the data, right? So the one option that we have, if we want to know, let's say we want to analyze over a period of years how the countries purchasing power, or you can say the GDP per person has been increasing, or which country has been increasing, which country has been decreasing, and by what rate. So we need to calculate certain measures or certain way. In if you if you want to go back to the old way of doing things in the school in the Excel, we need to bring the GDP to the population table or population to the GDP table, and then we create the table. So let's see how we do that. So we click, if we want to go back to these tables again, we can just right click on any of this and click edit query, or you can click on here in the home tab and click on transform the data again. So once you click on transform the data, you will come back to the Power Query editor, and you will be able to see all your queries here and things. So now since the table has been connected, we can actually come and add the columns here. So or we can add columns here, or we can add the columns directly into the Power BI desktop here. So we can say add column. So we look at it here in the table view, and then we can say new measure, new column. So we can create actually a new column where we will be able to see it here. The column is appearing, and there's a formula. So what we want to do with it, we can bring the formula from the other table, right? So we can bring in those columns, but we don't want to do that because that's not the ideal way. The ideal way of doing the thing is we just want to remove it, and then the better way is new measure. So the measure means that it's a calculation only. We are not storing the data anywhere. We will not store the data with Aruba 2006 GDP, how much population, how much again, and then calculate the per person GDP and or like this. We will not do that anymore. So we will. So the new measure, when we click on measure, it will just create a formula, and we will be able to use anywhere. That's the benefit of the measure. So let's click on new measure. The new measure does not save anywhere. It's just a measure. So let's say we want to use GDP per person. So how do we do that? Now we need to click on the GDP per person. We need to use the name. We need to give a name to the measure. Then then type equal sign. Now there are some formulas here like sum, divide, which we use in Power BI. So for divide, because we are just dividing one column with another column, we can just use the formula, expression called divide. Once you start typing in, let's say divide, divi, it will automatically tell you that this is the function available. And when you press tab on it, you will be able to, it will auto complete and will start giving you the idea. So now you can see on the top of the screen, it's a divide. You need to tell the numerator first. So what is the numerator? The numerator is the country GDP file. So where is the country GDP? The country GDP is in the table called country dash GDP. So we need to start. So in whenever we are doing this, we always have to make sure we are telling the table first and then the column. Otherwise, it will not be able to calculate. Oops, sorry. Am I sharing my file? Here we are actually on the cursor in the formula. Okay, okay. Let me redo that. Let me redo that. Um, I will just delete it and then will I will just redo it because I think I went too fast in this relationships. Okay, okay. So we were at this relationship. Now we have created the relationship with one to many relationship in the tables between the tables. So that was until the initial block of the data modeling. Once we have cleaned up the data, we have created the relationships. Now we are ready to do some analysis. So the only basic analysis which I intended to do in this particular files was the to see which country is progressing faster on country GDP per population. So because we cannot compare the country's GDP itself, right? We need to compare it how much is the population, and we cannot see which country is having a larger GDP per population or not. So we need to know that. So now we need, if you want to understand that, the first option for us is to have the country GDP and the country population in one column. But since we don't want to increase the number of columns unnecessary, and we have it in different tables from different sources, we have already created the relationship between the three different tables like here above. We don't need to bring all the data into one table like in a traditional Excel format. What we can do is, instead of that, we can work with something called measure. Now measures are extra measures are you can call them a formula which can be reused over and over again, and can be used in other formulas. So they are like building blocks of analysis. Now, how do we create the measures? We click on the table, and then here they will be able to see the table name, the manage relationship, and something called new measure. So we can click on it, new measure, and measures always work by the name. So the basic about the measure is that you need to have a name, and it need to have a home table, right? The home table is automatically selected because we were in this particular table at the time of creating the measure. So the home table was automatically selected as country dash GDP. We will work on the other part of format or other things later once we finish it. So the way it works, we need to tell a name. We can use the measure also, but we don't want to use measure itself as a name because otherwise we will be confused. So we need to give it a name. So we can say the name is GDP per person, right? And once you do it, if you have to put a space and put equal sign, now the measure will start after the equal sign. So the first thing we have to tell is, in like in Excel, there are formulas in Power BI as well, like sum, divide, for the or for other things, average. There are formulas here as well in Excel in Power BI. So for calculating the GDP per capita, we need to divide GDP with population. So means we are doing a divide function here. So what we will do is, so we will start typing divi divide. When we are start typing, it will show what type of functions are available, right? So when we say D, it says we have data table, we have date, add, different functions, right? We will learn them separately, but now we want to do divide. So divide. So you don't need to type the whole. Once you know this is what you want, then you can just press tab on your keyboard, and it will automatically complete divide, and it will turn it a light blue so that it knows this is an expression, and it is giving you a idea of how you want to fill up this function. So this divide is numerator and denominator, and you need to give the alternate result. So alternate result, because if let's say some on some years, on some days, on some months, you don't have the population, or you don't have and then it will, the divide formula will normally throw an error. So how do we handle that error? That's the third expression here. So first we need to give the numerator, and numerator is the column called country GDP. Uh, so how do we do that? We need to point the we cannot point the table here. We need to type the first we need to type the table in which it is, in which the column of country GDP lies. So it lies in countries dash GDP. So we'll start typing country dash GDP. Oops, it's not signing. Let me. Oops, GDP. I have not finished it. Numerator is, why I'm not able to use GDP. Let me use a normal function first. It's not allowing me to use. Let me cancel it out. Division, country data. Sorry, not country data. We need to use the country GDP, and we need to use the country population in denominator, and click OK. You can change the name here. GDP per person. Okay, so that's what I was missing. It needs to have a sum. Okay, so the way we create measure is use of the formula. So the what I have used is the quick measure to see if you are not sure about what how the function is going to be working. We could use quick measure as a way to understand how the to build our formulas easily. So now here we say GDP per person. Divide is the main expression, and then we say sum of the country GDP, because sum means because we are not calculating for each row separately. We will be doing that for when we are working on an individual tables. We will explain you how it works, but the formula is divide, the comma started, the blanket started, and sum of the country GDP, the column name, and the comma for the denominator is going to be the population, and then we close parenthesis and hit enter. Rename measure is already been used. Oh, sorry, GDP per population, or you can say per capita. So GDP per capita is the right one, and this measure we can delete from the model. Okay, okay. So now we have created our first measure. So to check, always as a best practice, we want to check how is the measure, is it working or not working. So let's create a simple grid where we select the country name. Normally we if we want to use the arrows, we always want to use from the base table, the country data, because in the in the tables structure, we maybe I can explain you about the table structure first. So there are a few type of tables that we work with now. We have covered the basic data transformation, header row, remove row, split columns. We have not worked. We will work on a separate basis. And unpivot, we have learned remove duplicates, deal with the blanks, and replace values. Now there are few tables that few type of